A major part of stress in everyday life comes from control issues. We all have them to some degree. A control issue is when you think that you know best and you just wish that everyone would adhere to what you think is best because then the world would be better. Well, control issues often come about because we haven't learned to trust in the Lord with all of our heart. And today we're going to take a look at the next attribute of God, which is his sovereignty, meaning that God is in charge. When I was in the New Age, I toured with my publisher, Louise Hay, who taught repeatedly that our thoughts create our reality. And I started to buy into that. I had already grown up in New Thought that taught that your health is because of your thoughts. And if you think negative or you have what they call an error in thinking, then you would get sick or injured. And so to come into Louise Hay's influence in the New Age, and then I unfortunately passed it along, that our thoughts create our reality, led me into the law of attraction and the whole belief in the so-called secret that we can manifest with our thoughts, our visualizations, our visions, and all those New Age pagan beliefs. When all this time, it's God who's in charge, not our thoughts, not our vision boards, not our visions. We may seem to get those goodies for a time because the devil's a counterfeiter. I certainly seem to manifest a few things, but they were never satisfying. They didn't fill me up like I was hoping because I was hungry for Jesus. I was hungry for truth that can only be found in the Bible. So let's turn today to our devotional and reflection question about God's sovereignty. And I pray this is comforting for you, sister, to know that we don't need to be in charge of everything. We can't be, in fact, that God is in charge of everything. So today's devotional is God is sovereign. And our opening verse is, our God is in the heavens. He does all that he pleases, from Psalm 115:3. God is sovereign, which means that he has absolute authority and rule over everything. Nothing's outside of his power, and nothing surprises him. God reigns with wisdom, love, and perfect timing. Psalm 115:3 doesn't say God does whatever pleases us. It says that he does all that pleases him. That might sound a little unsettling at first, especially if we've been falsely taught to view God like a genie who exists to make our lives comfortable. Yet God's sovereignty is about him enacting his perfect will according to his perfect plan and timing. This is comforting because if God wasn't sovereign, we would have every reason to fear. Some women have control issues because they don't realize that God is in control. So they falsely believe that they must manage and direct everyone and everything. Yet his thoughts are higher than ours, as we read in Isaiah 55:8-9. So we can rest knowing that nothing is out of his control, including painful situations that he uses to give us strength, to help us to grow spiritually, and to draw us closer to him. And today's reflection questions are you struggling with control issues about any area of your life? How does trusting that God is sovereign help you to be more at peace? God's thoughts certainly are higher than ours. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And learning to trust God means that we can trust that he sees the entire picture, not just the big picture of life. He sees the entire picture. Why? Because he created it. He sees the past, present, and future, which is different than the timeline that we're in. And we can lean into him. It doesn't mean that we have no responsibilities. Of course, we need to be wise and pray for wisdom and take steps accordingly. It means that we are learning to trust in the Lord with all of our heart and to not lean on our own understanding, as Proverbs 3:5 exhorts us to. And one of the ways that we learn to trust God is by learning more about him through studying the Bible every day and pouring into studying his attributes as we're doing in these weekly videos. It also helped me to read the book of Job in the Bible, in which God speaks to Job and says, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, where were you when I hung the stars in the sky? Where were you when I filled the oceans? Where were you when I controlled the wild animals' actions? And etc. The law of attraction kind of implies that we can do all that. But let's say that someone gives it a try to make a planet or to make a star. We can't. And that's necessarily humbling to realize that God is the creator, God is in charge, and God is sovereign. Praise the Lord that this is true and that we can let go of control issues and walk in God's strength, protection, provision, and wisdom. I want to thank you so much for joining with me. My prayers are with everyone watching these videos. God bless you. See you next Sunday.